Ladies and gentlemen, a truly special guest that we have here in the Combat Zone booth. It's none other than the CEO of BKB Bare Knuckle Boxing, David Tetreault. David, great to have you, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Oh, I'm fantastic, man. Better that we got you in here to talk about what could be a historic, massive partnership between BKB, Bare Knuckle Boxing, and Bally's. And this just isn't a broadcast specific distribution partnership, but expands to venues, innovative technology with Bally's sensor systems, and more, all set to debut on January 9th in 2026. Walk me through this. Where did this deal come from?
Well, it's interesting. Back when I was chief business officer for Golden Boy Promotions, working for Oscar De La Hoya, I came to know Sue Kim,
Hmm.
who at the time, had the Bally's network, through the Sinclair deal that he did with the regional cable channels. And Oscar and I were working very closely with Sue on creating a boxing series for him for that whole new Bally's partnership that he had created on the regional sports networks. And in doing that, we came to know a lot of Sue's desires. And one of his big things was that he was in the business of sports really to gamify everything. So
Hmm.
he was looking for a way to put sensors into the gloves and to begin tracking punches, not only the punch count per round, but actually the types of punches, a left cross, an uppercut, then the velocity of punches, the G forces of punches. And when he was looking to do was figure out a way to create engagement during the fights. So during the fights, the broadcasters and the broadcast at home would be broadcast with all of this information about what's going on with these punches, and then instilling the opportunity for prop bets was really kind of a big part of it. It's all gamifying the whole thing. So Oscar and I did a pilot for him under the KO Entertainment brand that we created back in 2021. And it came out really great. And when we did this pilot, we did it all in one day. It was boxing for a half of it, and then it was MMA for the other half. And in the MMA portion, it was not only the wrist wraps, but it was also the ankle wrap. So we could
Hmm.
test kicks and everything. So now, fast forward, 4 years later, I maintained a really high level relationship with Sue. He's acquired more casinos. He's built out more of his distribution with not only Bally's Live, but also the Stadium platform. And, I went to him when I became the CEO at BKB, and I said, look, I still love that idea. I'd love to figure out a way in which we can really start taking it to the next level. So I met with him back in May of this year. And, during that course of time, we've come to a plan that really makes it a 360. So everything that Sue is investing in, from his distribution with the platforms to his casino investments, as well as to his technology, and all the money that he's put into technology, all comes full circle. And it comes full circle with bare knuckle boxing, which is really the best way to take this technology to the heights that he's looking for. And especially with BKB, we are the best on the planet. We've got the best fighters in the world. And that's what we're doing. So we launched this January 9th in Biloxi at his Hard Rock Casino. So it's a great story just because we kept the perseverance between each other to bring it together.
And to talk about the 4 years, I mean, so much time in transitioning from gloved combat to now taking it off. Was there a thought where you went, hey, there's no gloves. Where are we going to put these sensors? Or was it always happily attached to the wrists?
Well, you know what? That was a bit of a concern, but having been around it from the
Mhm.
origins, I knew that the sensors were small enough, and I knew that when we were in California, when we did it the first time, we wrapped them, in the wrists of the MMA fighters with very small gloves, and we didn't have a problem. And during those 4 years, Sue's perfected the technology, and those sensors are even smaller now. So I wasn't too worried that we weren't going to get that done correctly.
It's such innovative, cutting edge additions, I would say, to combat sports. I really can only think about PFL with their smart cage and trying to stat track to a minimal degree. But, for you, why don't you think other organizations try to innovate in this manner?
I think that when you look at, traditional boxing, it's got a lot of elements to it that really go to the purity of the sport. And, I think that they worry sometimes that it could impact the way that judges score. And a big part of what Sue and I were doing, we teamed up at the time with the WBC and did, several meetings with them to ensure that it would just augment the broadcast. It wasn't going to take any position away from the judges and the way that that goes. I just think that sometimes longstanding traditions are hard to break. And I think with BKB, bare knuckle boxing, and what we're doing, I mean, we are the oldest combat sport out there when you really think about it. But we have the flexibility, the durability, and the desire to advance the technology.
Now, there's a nice almost 3 month runway to this event in Biloxi. What other maybe announcements or layers on top of this partnership can the BKB and Bally's fans expect surrounding January 9th?
Well, I mean, a big part of the way that we've drafted our agreement, it's going to include not only our live broadcast, but also our library. There are a number of things that his top programming executives are looking at doing with our library. And then there's also an original programming aspect, and we have a media and entertainment division inside of BKB that will be producing custom content specifically for Bally's. It'll only be seen on Bally's, just as this is an exclusive live fight series only available on Bally's.
And that, I believe, is helmed by Don Povio, which I think is deeply exciting. Can you tease maybe what some of these documentaries are about? Any fighters that could be featured in some of this original programming?
Well, yeah, I mean, when you look at, the ascent of,
Mhm.
somebody like Jamie Driver, who is, our top female fighter, on our roster. Not only her desire, inside the ring, but just the way that she's conducted herself outside the ring, some of the adversity that she's overcome. We're going to showcase what that takes. We're going to showcase, some of the mettle that these bare knuckle fighters have to go through. Their life stories are challenging. They're telling. And then on the UK side, we have a ton of UK fighters that really come out of the boxing origin, whereas in the US, they're much more out of the MMA and the UFC discipline. But those are real boxers, and their style of fighting, when they get into the Trigon, it's amazing to watch. It really gives you that sweet look into the sweet science. And we're going to be telling all of those stories, and we're going to show kind of the differences in style from the UK to the US and to, through some of our fighters that we have throughout the world.
A couple more on this January 9th premiere event. For 4 years of effort putting this deal together, what personally are you most excited in seeing unfold, right? This is a vision, a dream that is becoming a reality to kick off 2026 for you.
Well, what I'm super excited about really is, number one, it is that 360 effect of
Mhm.
all the investment that Sue has made. And then for us on the BKB side, it really is the essence of kind of showing our sport and the beauty of our sport and the way that these fighters, endure velocity, the way they endure G-force, the way they throw, straight overhand rights, all of it. We want to tell those stories. We want to illustrate those stories. And part of the beauty of this is that the audience that we attract currently is definitely a younger skewing audience than traditional boxing. So we're hitting, the Gen Zs, we're hitting the millennials, and they love everything about our sport. Now you add this layer on top of it of the technology, and you talk about what PFL has done with the smart cage. We're going to be in that same space. We're going to be speaking to our audiences with this technology, and we're very, very sure that they're going to embrace it.
Now, David, for you taking a step outside of this amazing partnership, May 22nd of this year, it was announced you're coming into BKB. Can you walk me through the first time this idea floated around your table of stepping in and taking over as the president, now CEO of BKB and Trigon?
Yeah, I'll have to say that it was a rather quick process. To be honest with you, I was president at Triller for the past 3 years before that, and we did some amazing stuff on the boxing side. We also did something with the Trigon, not
Hmm.
dissimilar to BKB, but with gloves on. And we had some really great fights. I did Emiliano Vargas's pro debut, which, it's something that will always stick with me, and I'm still great friends with him, and what a career he's having. But as Triller was kind of going through their next evolution, we looked really closely at where we were with boxing, where the world was with boxing, and we made a big pivot. And that pivot was the investment into bare knuckle with BKFC. And I devoted a lot of time to BKFC, did a lot of work with David on growing the business and putting together deals that made sense for the company.
Hmm.
But at the same time, when I left Golden Boy as the chief business officer, I was looking for the opportunity to be my own man, to be a promoter, and to run an organization. And that just wasn't in the cards for me, just with the way that we were now dealing with combat sports at Triller. And I met Mike Vasquez. We talked about, a lot of the stuff that I had done at Golden Boy. Him and I actually had conversations while I was at Golden Boy. There was discussions about, potentially Oscar and I investing in BKB even way back then. So we had a history. And as Mike and I were talking, and he was telling me some of the needs and some of his vision, I shared mine, and the rest is history. And
Yeah.
May 22nd, I made my move, and ever since then, we have been on a tear. We've done several shows in the UK, several here in the US. We're ending the year with a bang with our show this weekend in Miami with the Four Kings of Bare Knuckle, which is going to be great. Then we go to Cardiff for December 5th. And then there you go, right there, January 9th, we're in Biloxi with our first show, exclusively on the Bally's networks. And then from there, we're back to our numbered events. Our first numbered event of the year is going to be back in Miami on January 31st. Then we head to London. We're going to be at the O2 Arena at the Indigo Theater on February 21st. Going to be a great show. And then we enter Foxwoods at their major casino, beautiful property on March 28th. So we've got a bunch of stuff that's already in store. We're building out this organization in a way that we're going to tell those stories. With Don Povia, who's my chief marketing officer, I have launched and embarked in an entirely new media and entertainment division that's going to do all of that stuff that I was talking about. We've got a group coming from the UK, We Go Again, which is
Mm.
one of the top documentary filmmakers in boxing right now. They do all of the stuff for Turkey Al Sheikh. They're working on a project for us. They started shooting that for us the last time we were out in Leeds. They're coming out here to Miami this weekend to complete that. We're in discussions with Fremantle about a deal that could be all encompassing, that looks at our live rights, that looks at our reality series. We have a hell of a reality series that we're developing right now. It's our version of The Ultimate Fighter, but it's
Mm.
different. It's more gritty. It's made for bare knuckle, as well as documentaries and the gamification. So we have a lot of runway. We have a lot of opportunity in front of us, and I couldn't be more pleased than to be working for Mike Vasquez, who's the visionary behind this organization.
With the reality TV series, how much keeping up with the Kardashians influence can the fans expect? Are we really going all in, David?
Oh, no, 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 no.
Come on, we got it. What was it? What was the guy's name? Scott Disick.
We're
We got to get Scott in this one.
no, we're not gonna go that deep, but I will say what you were asking about the fighters and kind of seeing the nuances in their stories. This is the type of show that's going to allow us to do that. It's a 10 episode, per season series. You introduce all the fighters, you introduce the two coaches. We embark on our tournament, and it's all done by weight class. There's ultimately one winner. That winner gets a contract, and then we move on. But what we will do with the coaches that we bring, and those coaches will be major fighters that are already fighters inside our organization. They'll be popularizing the sport for us as coaches. But what we're going to be doing is really telling those stories. and telling the story of bare knuckle and telling about the brotherhood. I mean,
Mm.
I got to tell you, when you witness when both these men and women come into that trigon to fight and the respect that they have for one another as they get into the trigon before the fight, during the fight, you can see it in their faces, but after the fight, win, lose, or draw, they congratulate one another. They are a brotherhood, and it's a movement that we're developing here with bare knuckle.
As someone that's fought in bare knuckle myself, I can tell you it is absolutely that process and feeling that you develop with your opponent. I want to take sort of a step backwards as well and see, because you mentioned the Golden Boy experience and the BKFC Triller experience. What do you think has been the biggest skill you've gained coming into BKB across your plethora of years inside combat sports?
Well, I think the great thing that I got out of Golden Boy, working alongside Oscar, I learned the promotion business
Yeah.
inside and out. I mean, from doing prospect shows to contender and championship shows to the biggest shows in the world, that feature Canelo Alvarez, Ryan Garcia, you name it. Those are the fights that we've done. And I got to learn that in an entirely holistic manner. So I got an insight to the true nuts and bolts of operations, the true nuts and bolts of matchmaking. And then, I oversaw all of the production, all of the media and entertainment, all of the deal making. I did the big DAZN deal with Canelo that landed him
Mm.
$365 million over a 5-year period. And that exposure, coupled with many of the deals that I did across ESPN. I did the first ever social media license fee deal with Meta at the time. We were doing shows throughout Mexico and the US that they were paying for, coupled with programming. So I learned those great skills there. And then I learned a whole nother layer when I was at Triller of kind of taking those shows and bringing entertainment into them and adding another layer with music, with
Mm.
rappers and different things like that. And now you kind of bring this whole thing full circle with BKB and, like I said, the audiences that we're tapping into with both Gen Z and the millennials. I feel that I have a real good bead on kind of what they want to see, how they want to consume it, and we're taking all of those skills into that direction.
The Tetreault finger on the pulse, as they would say. Now, you talk about the roster that BKB has, and it is fantastic, very high quality. But an electrifying addition you mentioned on October 22nd this year could be Alexander Usyk. Talks are occurring. I have to follow up on this. What could
Yes.
this potential timeline look like, and what has his temperature been on taking the gloves off?
We've had meetings. I've had meetings with his manager, Igis Klimas. We've talked
Mm.
about it. There was, especially when during his lull in between kind of his last couple of fights, just on the sidelines, not his lull inside the ring. I mean, he's the most amazing heavyweight fighter that we've ever seen. He was very interested. He was very interested when we were working on a project out in Spain. And continued those conversations. We're still waiting to hear back as to what that timeline might look like. He
Mhm.
still does have some heavyweight fights in front of him that he's going to finish. But there's always that chance that he could become accessible and
Yeah.
and and look into this. But we've had those conversations and they're ongoing.
And like we talked about with this partnership between Bally's and BKB, it's the long game that Tetral's good at. And so,
That's it, man. We can wait this out. We can wait this out. He's always a guest whenever, anytime. We're in Europe. It makes it easy. He was at some of my other shows previous to here. But those conversations are there and they're real.
is there in your mind potential, or maybe not even potential opponents necessarily, because I know that that's still being determined, but who would you maybe be curious to see him face off against in a bare knuckle setting? Like when you ponder Usyk in the ring, who in your mind is opposite him?
I mean, ultimately, if I could do this, and I did have a deal with him in the past for boxing,
Mhm.
I'd love to see him square up with Andy Ruiz.
Yeah.
That,
Oh
to me,
boy.
to me, that would just be the ultimate heavyweight showdown in bare knuckle.
You got to put some steel reinforcements on the ring, I think, if you're
Yep.
if you're putting those two guys in there.
But yeah,
Um,
look, I floated it to Andy as well and to his father.
yeah.
You know what I mean, but a lot more direct conversations with Usyk.
Yeah, well, Ruiz and Usyk down the line could be quite fun, but I'll cap off this segment just a open question: who else would you maybe want to see in BKB bare knuckle boxing? Who could join this universe that you think would fit right in inside the Trigon?
Right now, if I had my pick, I'd love to
Yeah,
bring Nate Diaz in.
yeah.
I would just love it, man. I would love to bring him in. I'd love to bring in his attitude. I'd love to bring in his skill set, and I'd love to see him in bare knuckle.
Has he expressed interest? I feel like I've seen him talk about bare knuckle boxing before.
Yeah, he has, and I've had conversations with him as well. At the right time,
Yeah.
possible. But yeah, that would be somebody that we'd love to have in.
Well, David Tetreault, I'll leave you off with this one. I need to ask, what was the greatest skill you gained through working as an ad sales associate for FNN and CNBC back in the day?
Follow up.
Follow up.
Follow up with your customer.
It's once, twice, maybe three times you got to check in, of course, right?
And that was way back when I was 22 years old, right out of college.
Yeah. It's a blast from the past, maybe, but I love it. Are there any other details maybe on this historic partnership between BKB, bare knuckle boxing, and Bally's that you think the fans should linger on as we head into the next several weeks waiting for this January 9th date to arrive?
Yeah. One great thing that I think that all the fans are going to love. Not only are we going to be calculating the punches, but what will populate the television screen is a power bar. And that
Mm.
power bar is going to kind of show us who's taking on damage and who's losing energy. So it's going to be a fun addition. And like I said, it's going to speak to the gamers out there in a whole different manner.
I was gonna say, I bet you're a Street Fighter type fan if you're putting the power bar in. I love it. I love it.
Hey, that was Sue's idea, by the way. That's his. I can't take that. That's him.
Well, David, thank you so much for the time today, sir. Loved learning more about this partnership. I cannot wait for January 9th and would love to have you back on anytime to discuss the developments in the world of BKB bare knuckle boxing.
All right. Thank you so much, Ben. Looking forward to a long-lasting partnership with Bally's and yourself.